Politics. Our guest today is Mike Kelly. He's the proprietor of Jimmy Kelly's Restaurant, 88 years in Nashville, and a great family story that dates back even before that. Mike, we've also found out that your grandfather started one of the first car rental businesses in Nashville, and it was successful, but it was really a cover for his bootleg.
It was a way to bring whiskey in from out of state.
John expanded his use of cars also as well. I was struck in your book the level of lawlessness that was going on, not just in Nashville, but across the country. I mean, Prohibition was a great experiment, but obviously a great experiment that very much failed. There's never been anything quite like that in American history?
I don't think so. It was absolute lawlessness, and that's why ultimately they repealed Prohibition, because they said that there was, in Chicago, the police chief said 90% of his patrol was on the tape.
I mentioned the ice business earlier. The ice business became a very important part of this because your grandfather understood that another way of being able to distribute liquor and whiskey out into the community was if you were an ice customer, you could get something else besides your ice when you got your delivery once a week.
You got your 10 pounds of ice, Pat. Then you could also get a bottle of Jack Daniels and a bottle of Tanqueray delivered, slipped into your ice box without any problem.
And he never had any trouble about that with the authorities?
Well, he never did, because most of it, the authorities were his customers.
I was going to say, the police chief was a customer, and so were most of the police officers.
Most of the officers. And the mayor and the governor, for that matter.
Yeah, the other thing that happened, particularly in Nashville, because we had a mayor like Hillary House who was here for many years, and others, that occasionally you might, particularly when you started the restaurant, you might get raided, but generally speaking, nobody went to jail about it.
No, nobody went to jail.
I must say also, you do such a good job in the book, not only of telling your family history stories, but also telling how it fits in the context of what was going on in the country and in the world about Prohibition and things like that. It really makes it come alive. It's not just, oh, that's an interesting story. It fits in the context of what's going on all over the place.
Well, thanks. We wanted it to feel that way. We wanted to have context to what was really going on.
Now, Prohibition ended in 1934, at least on the nationwide level, but you would have thought maybe John Kelly was going to go back to the straight and narrow, but that's not really what happened, because when he decided to go into the restaurant business, Tennessee still had lots of laws against liquor.
They had liquor by the drink. You couldn't serve it by the glass.
And they still had those bone dry laws.
Bone dry laws were still around.
And
sure.
It took some years before that actually happened, before they changed the law to do that. It took a good while before you get to package stores, and we had to go until the 60s until we got liquor by the drink. He finally decided he wanted to go into the restaurant business. Had that been a dream of his for a long time, your grandfather?
During the time of Prohibition, he visited many cities and ate in all these wonderful restaurants, fine restaurants around the country, in Chicago and New York and Miami. So his dream was to open that back up. Now,
we mentioned being raided by the restaurant, but also there was one time, I believe, the feds raided your grandfather's home out on Woodmont Boulevard. He never kept liquor in the house, or at least not much.
Not much. Well, and he knew the Untouchables had come to town. Everybody in the world knew that these, 10 black cars that came rolling in, word spread quickly. But
now, that day that they raided them, they were about to be arrested because they found a wedding gift that your grandmother had.
It was a series of liqueur bottles that she kept in her upper bed.
A wedding gift.
Wedding gifts, yeah.
And now, you were allowed to have a certain amount of liquor in those days legally. And had they been full, they would have. But my grandfather demanded they pour them up. When he saw the bottles, he said, well, you need to pour up and get the measurements. And luckily, the maid had been sipping a little bit out of the liqueur over the years, and there wasn't enough. And so the 8 Untouchables slammed the door of the car and speed away down Woodmont Boulevard. Now, another interesting raid that happened after you started the 216 Club, which is 216 8th Avenue North downtown, around where the old Ben West Library used to be downtown. They raided it one day, and in those days they'd gone to what was called the BYOB, bring your own bottle, and if the customer was there and he had signed the bottle, it was his bottle, you could serve a drink for him. Of course, a lot of cases, those weren't really his bottles.
They weren't really.
And there was a cop who decided he was going to press his luck and have every customer come down and identify that this was his bottle and this was his signature. And one customer identified it that way, but was kind of mad about it, kind of for what the liquor was.
He turned to my uncle and said, "Kelly, I don't mind you putting my name on a bottle, but do you have to put it on cream to mint?"
Now, your grandfather died in 1948. About that time, your uncle, Jimmy Kelly, decided he wanted to go out on his own and have his own restaurant, and that's when you moved out to Harding Road, across the street from the Bellmead Theater.
Well, of course, at that time, people were moving to the suburbs. Movie theaters had started moving out into the suburbs, and he moved across from the Bellmead Theater because that's what people like to do. They like to have dinner and then go to the movie.
That's the first Jimmy Kelly's I remember going to, and you had these red checkered tablecloths.
That's right.
And you had a downstairs that was the popular place to go. You parked in the back and went there. But a lot of people who didn't know any different from out of town went in the front. Why was the downstairs so popular?
That's where the bar was, Pat.
Oh, okay.
It was like a roving cocktail party every night. People would hang out in that lower level.
The 216 Club did stay in business for a while, but family fell afoul of urban renewal. Is that what basically?
Urban renewal made us close.
And did you continue to be successful out at Harding Road?
Very.
Although eventually you lost your lease out there, and that's when you got involved. Now, you worked in the restaurant since you were 9 years old.
That's when I first started, absolutely.
And but then later on, after you got out of high school and after you got out of college, you went in a different direction. You were doing some architectural type work.
That's right. I worked for Gresham and Smith.
Did you not think at that time, were you not interested in the hospitality business?
I enjoyed that, but when it came time for my dad to move the restaurant, I kind of got involved because of my knowledge and just never left.
We're talking to Mike Kelly. He's the proprietor of Jimmy Kelly's Restaurant, 88 years in Nashville, and a great new book about the history of the family and the history of that restaurant. Back to continue our conversation with Mike after this break.
It's back in